The MIM Digital Marketing Specialist Program was designed by local and international industry practitioners with the aim to equip all participants with strategic, tactical and technical knowledge to immediately upskill them with the skill sets, employability and increase the demand for their services in the digital economy. The program provides a solid understanding of digital marketing ecosystem in the real world. It offers experiential learning. Participants can build capabilities and skill set to offer their services not only locally but also internationally.
So this could be a kind of advisory service that you could offer as a marketing specialist. So obviously you need to listen. You listen as in listen to social media, engage in that conversation and measure and refine that conversation.
In terms of marketing objective, this will actually support the overall business objective by promoting the brand image and presence across the markets in Asia Pacific.
In terms of the facilitators, all facilitators are industry practitioners with years of experience and facilitators who are able actually to impart the practical knowledge so that participants are able to apply whatever learned in the real life.
I'm a chartered accountant by practice. So when I got to know about this program, I was interested because I always get to see this scrolling on Facebook, seeing this digital marketing. So I wanted to know what is this about. And then apparently we had this session with MIM. The session was very mind-blowing to me personally, being an accountant that doesn't know about this before. And actually it's very practical to our real-life situation in which what is happening behind the scene that we don't know, but we scroll through every day through our social media. So if you ask me now, can I do a digital marketing service? I'd say definitely 100%. I know what to do, where to click, who to market to, what is our potential prospecting kind of thing. So for an accountant to be able to say that, I would say that this program is successful and kudos to the organizers.
I attend this MIM courses. I think it's very beneficial. Can put all these things into our practical. I'm doing property, so this course helped me a lot so that I can do my advertisement more effectively.
I believe that I have learned a lot from this course. Speaking of the participants, I feel like everybody has been really helpful, and whoever has extra knowledge or of this digital marketing, they were very open and willing to share their knowledge. It's the beginning for me.
I would say this course is very useful and insightful for a beginner like me. I'm totally new to digital marketing. The instructor gave me a better picture of this digital marketing world.
In fact, very productive and very immersive and very hands-on. I must really give credit to MIM for doing such overall training, because to me it's a lifelong training. It doesn't end here. In short, I learned a lot. In fact, a lot more than I expected.
Thank you, HRDF.
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 Thank you, MIM.
Thank you, MIM.
Thank you, MIM. Insightful.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Mind-blowing.
Okay. A very good afternoon and salam sejahtera to our distinguished panel of speakers, members of the MIM fraternity, guests, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you to our MIM Crucial Conversations, and our topic for today is on corporate liability, Section 17A of the MACC Act, the ultimate vaccine for corruption in public sector. I understand we have close to about 400 over participants who have registered now, and we had an earlier registration of about 600, and I want to thank all of you who have joined us this afternoon. Now, our last session on Crucial Conversation was on 10th of August, where we had our panel of local and international speakers who shared their valuable insights on topics of fighting corruption as a nation. For those of you who did not attend the session, please feel free to watch it on our YouTube channel or write into our membership department at membership@mim.org.my. Now, please allow me to thank our sponsor, the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, and our supporting partners, Federation of Public Listed Companies, Association of Chartered and Certified Accountants, ACCA, and the Malaysian Institute of Insurance. Now, for today's session, we have now, we have close to about 400 plus registered participants, and let's move on to this session. The Malaysian Anti-Corruption Act 2009 was amended to introduce corporate liability provision for bribery and corruption under Section 17A of the MACC Act, which came into effect on 1st June 2020. A year on, we have witnessed the first case where an offshore vessel company and its director was charged under Section 17A of the MACC Act 2009, which was in early this year in connection with the count of bribery worth about 321,000, which was paid to secure a contract. Now, this afternoon, we look forward to having our distinguished panel of speakers share their valuable insight. And our first speaker for today is none other than Yang Bahagia, Dato Anis, Dr. Anis Yusoff, who is a principal fellow of the Institute of Ethnic Studies at UKM. Dr. Anis Yusoff has previously been the Deputy Director General of the National Centre for Governance, Integrity and Anti-Corruption at the Prime Minister's Department. Prior to this, he was also the Director General of the National Integrity and Good Governance Department, Malaysia. He had also served as President and Chief Executive Officer of the Malaysian Institute of Integrity. Prior to joining the Institute of Ethnic Studies, UKM, Dr. Anis had also spent more than about 10 years at the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, as well as the United Nations Volunteers Headquarters in Bonn, Germany between 1994 and 2005. Dr. Anis obtained his PhD from the National University of Malaysia, UKM, in Ethnic Studies and MSc in Information Management and Technology from Syracuse University in New York. He has been actively speaking and writing on issues related to people, development, and his research and writings have been published as books, chapters, and as an article in a number of journals and newspapers. Dr. Anis is also regularly invited by the national media as an analyst of Malaysian social politics to discuss areas related to corruption, money politics, and ethnic relations. Now, Dr. Anis will be speaking on the importance of Section 17A of the corporate liability and its adequate procedures. Dr. Anis, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Siva, for that kind introduction. Thank you to MIM for inviting me this afternoon to share whatever little information that I have. What I plan to do in the next 30 minutes, if Shazwan can put the slide on, is to actually discuss about the importance of this Section 17 capital A corporate liability, as well as on adequate procedures. These are two important thing that we should understand. I know when I was approached to speak, I made it clear that I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a legal person. At the outset, I'm no expert about this law, but I was involved in the beginning, and what I'm about to share is some of the things that we did understand, in the hope that at the end of my 30 minutes sharing, the participant will be able to realize why this is important. So that's basically what I want to drive home. Okay, so the importance of Section 17A, corporate liability and adequate procedures, in terms of how I'm going to do it this afternoon, I'm going to tell stories. In fact, I'm going to tell you 3 stories. The first story that I'm going to tell is her story. This is dedicated to Joyce and the other panelists. Before we even talk about history, and then is the end, is our story. Now, what is this her story that I want to talk about? I want to talk about, again, I want to focus to this lady called Miss Malaysia. And in particular, what about this lady, Miss Malaysia, made up of this 14 state? We want to focus on the state of corporate governance and what should we do. But before I go and talk about our own problem, I thought I want to introduce to you this quote. There are two stories to begin with before we get into it. This quote was taken from somebody that I know dearly in the 90s. And he's the person used to be the former CEO of MIM, Dr. Tasisis Chin. I used to travel with him all over the country. We've been organizing seminars and speaking to the public about some issues related to governance and integrity. Already back then in the 90s, we've been doing this. But Dr. Chin wrote this very interesting piece that I thought would be worth for us to look at. When he was talking about soft skills, he said that soft skills, on the other hand, tend to last. So he said we need to have the soft skills. They are the universals as they relate to principles of conduct and values of behavior. They cannot be taught, but they can be learned. This is an important part. Integrity, I always tell people, cannot be taught, but it has to be caught. But it can be learned. And learning has to be experiential, drawing not on our intellect, but on our emotional and spiritual intelligence. So this means lots of exercises, fieldwork and direct participation, and involvement in grappling with issues rather than in dealing with tasks. You can listen to all the lectures on good communication, but unless you are also required to practice and be consciously assessed as to how you have performed, you will not likely be a good communicator. And this is the most important part of what he wrote that I want to quote here. Likewise, Dr. Chin said, promoting honesty and integrity and integrity is not a matter of classroom discussion as much as pursuing process and experiences that will test our honesty and our ability to respond to different situations. So basically, ladies and gentlemen, you can listen to lectures, forum and whatnot, but until you really experience it and learn it from yourself, you won't understand what we talk. So hence why I thought that to begin with, we have to really understand why this is important. So before we get back to the state of corporate governance, I want to share with you another important story. This is about this guy. I don't know how many of you recognize him. Look very distinguished, But this is the #1 con man in the world. This is Bernie Madoff. He has been sentenced 150 years in prison. This is the guy who started this Ponzi scheme. He conned, even many Hollywood actors and actresses. Managed to get away with more than 60 billion. How did he do it? Because he was able to be in the society. He's always seen at the clubhouse. So people who invest, who been conned by him, are people that he knows, who trusted him. They play golf with him. So the point that I want to drive home is that sometimes people that you trust are the one that will do all these things on you. So similarly, why corporate liability 17A capital A is important, because we want to make sure that people in the trust position don't abuse their position, and that's important. Now coming back to home, we know that corruption scandals occur everywhere around the world, in Brazil, in UK, in Sweden, of course, in France, and closer to home, we have our own problem, the 1MDB case, and people being charged, and there are other corruption cases. So, but how do we understand in the how things are going on right now? So if we look at this slide, this is a PwC Fraud Economic Crime Survey 2020 in Malaysia. So it says that of the fraud, corruption, or other economic crimes experienced by your organization in the last 24 months, which was the most disruptive or serious in terms of impact on your organization, monetary or otherwise? It was a question in this survey. From people who responded, from the key important issue areas that this survey was done, 3 of it showed how it went up from, for example, like bribery and corruption. In 2018, it was just 14%, but 2020 survey shows it went up to 18%. In customer fraud, it was 16% in 2018, went up to 20%. Cybercrime from 8%, double up in 2020 to 16%. Well, the only one that seems to look some kind of improvement is on asset misappropriation, from 22% went down to 16%. But the rest went up. This is a trend. This is the kind of indicator that will tell us what is the state of corporate governance in Malaysia. And if we look further in terms of the Malaysian business environment, these are some of the indicators to show how significant the challenges are. You look at the first, the top part, Malaysian respondents that have been asked to pay a bribe in 2018 was only 11%, but by 2020 it went up to 25%. And this is the worrying trend, the Malaysian respondents that have lost business opportunities because competitors paid a bribe. In 2018, it was 11%. In 2020, it went up to 30%. So can we continue to see this kind of trend continue? Perhaps if we do another survey by 2022, will the figure went up to 50%? If we do nothing, perhaps that is what's going to happen. So we need to look, and we go back to from Malaysia. We look at global indicator, and this is the statistics from how the global economic crime fraud survey compared to the one done in Malaysia. Still, bribery and corruption is high, it's 35%. Of course, there are other areas also for us to be concerned. So corporate governance, I think, if we don't inject the good corporate governance component, this is going to go to the other direction. I want to also give us some perspective using some international indices, and I picked 3 to see where we stand in terms of the other countries in the world. If we look at the UNDP Human Development Index, I used to work for UNDP and I know this index very well. We are number 61 out of 189 countries. You look at the other countries, the top 10 countries from Norway to Netherlands, and you can see Singapore is number 9. And this particular index look at 3 components. Look at not just in terms of how well we deal with money, but also in terms of how we manage our health and our education system. So the 3 components made up with this particular survey, and we are number 61 out of 189 countries. If we take Global Peace Index, this is another index done by Institute of Economic and Peace out of Sydney, and they compare 163 countries. In terms of peace, we are not bad. We are top 20. We're number 20. And Singapore, there, our neighbor, is number 7 on this index. From number 9 on the Human Development Index, they went up to 7 in terms of peace. But the worrying trend in Malaysia is really on corruption, and Transparency International, CPI, showed that, this is the first time we went up very high We were number 51 from number 61 in the previous years, in 2018. And unfortunately, the 2020 CPI, we went down again back to number 57. But look at the 10 countries on Corruption Perception Index. Singapore is number 4. So if we compare ourselves with the nearest neighbor and with other top 10 in the countries, I think we need to do more. We need to do a lot more. And by only understanding how people perceive us and some of these surveys, we realize where we are and what we need to do. Globally, of course, if you take Transparency International map, the way they map the whole world, people who scored below 50, the color gets darker. And you will see actually corruption is everywhere, with the exception of a few countries up in the north and the south, New Zealand but the rest of the world, except the color slightly differ in terms of orange and red, but they are darker red, but they are all involved. And basically, if they score below 50, corruption is everywhere. So it's a great challenge. That means this is nothing new, and we have to do a lot more in order for us to address some of the problems. I want to take us to do a bit of comparison based on the Corruption Perception Index and compare us with two countries. I want to compare us with South Korea and with Indonesia. If you look at Malaysia with South Korea, we were at par with them at 50. But South Korea is that pink color that went up above us, 56, 55, and they stay above 59. And I think last year they went up to 61. But we, on the other hand, gone through a roller coaster kind of ride, up, down, and we were going down for the last how many years, from 2015, 2016, 2017, 18, 47, and the effort that when we did the National Anti-Corruption Plan in 2019, we were able to bring it up to 53. But last year we went down back to 51 in terms of the score, the ranking as I've showed earlier. But let's look at Indonesia. Indonesia was down there from 24, 23, but they went up from 2007, 2008, 26, 28. They went up, and slowly but surely, they are now at 40. And if we are not careful, if we didn't do the effort that we did in terms of moving us between 2018 to 2019 to 53, we could meet them at some point. So these are the kind of things that you need to see why this particular laws is important, why we need to start at the board of the company, why the board members must not only provide the tone at the top, but they have to show example. Otherwise, we're going to be worse than Indonesia, and I don't think you would like that. I want to also share a study that I did while I was the president and CEO of the Malaysian Institute of Integrity. I conducted a survey in 4 public universities. And we asked the student 10 questions. Basically, the question is, are the following statements an act of corruption? So the first one we asked is accepting gift in the term of money, goods or services for services rendered. 36% say it's not corruption. We asked whether using office funds, money for personal interest. 20% of them said it's not wrong. 9% said they don't know. Forcefully obtaining money, goods or service from clients. 14% say it's not wrong. 5% say they don't know. Or directly involved in the process of awarding contracts to family members. 16% of them say not wrong. 21% of them say they don't know. Worrying. The other 4 questions. Directly involved in the process of appointing family members. 20% say it's not wrong. 17% says they don't know. And this is the worst. Submitting claims for outstation accommodation when accommodation is already provided by the organizer. 37% say it's not wrong. 22% says they don't know. And you can see, taking or using office equipment like thumb drive, printer, toner, and all that. 28% says it's not wrong. 14% says it's wrong. Fortunately, at least in terms of money politics, they know that this is wrong. But these 10 statements are issues taken from the Anti-Corruption Act, the MACC Act 2009. And these are all basically corruption. You can be charged for all this. So it's out of ignorance. You cannot say that this is not wrong. But if these people are not taught, are not, the awareness are not there in understanding what is wrong, what is right, and this was done maybe about 5-6 years ago, and a lot of these people are probably already, they have graduated, and certainly they have joined some of your companies out there, and I'm worried if they have not changed, and if they still have those kind of understanding, and if we do nothing about making sure the companies adhere to better good governance principles, we are heading to disaster. Now that we understand the problem, the state of corporate governance in Malaysia, I want to give us a bit of the history of how this whole thing started. This man sitting next to me, Tan Syed Abu Qasim, back in 2014, when he was still the chief of the anti-corruption agency, gave a speech out of frustration. I think we've been discussing this for a very long time. He's frustrated because whenever MACC arrested any of those guys, the one who bribed others, are only the operators. And when MACC interviewed them and asked them, they always say that they have been instructed by the board to go and bribe others to get projects or to get business. But the board get away with it because there are no laws that will make sure the board has to be accountable. So that's when he started the move that we need to amend the MACC Act in order to make sure that the board must also be accountable. So in 2015, 2018, it took 3 years for this act to draft, to discuss before it get passed by the parliament. Of course, in 2015, when Tan Syed Abu Qasim was investigating at 1MDB and he was asked to leave MACC. So while he was on garden leave, the minister responsible for the task at that time, Datuk Paul Loh, minister in charge of governance and integrity, and his deputy, Datuk Razali Ibrahim, basically took on to push the agenda that we need to have this corporate liability and got people at the MACC and at the AG chambers to work and to draft the law, excuse me. So after 3 years, this was one of the meetings where we discussed this. On the 4th of April 2018, we accompanied Datuk Razali present in Parliament, and this was the day, important day, where it was approved. So the first photo in the middle is the team from the AG chambers that helped to draft the law, the amendment to the law, and the photo on the right, extreme right, the team from MACC that worked very hard to ensure this was done. So with that history, we have this laws, the amendment of Section 17, capital A of Malaysian Anti-Corruption Act 2018. But when it was approved, basically there was a grace period. It didn't implement immediately. There was a 2-year grace period that to allow company to prepare themselves. So between 2018 May until June 2020, when it first was actually done. So in the meantime, we need to also come up with an adequate procedures to prepare companies to prepare themselves how to deal with the law when it comes into practice. So the first meeting in September 2018, which I chaired, brought together people from MACC, AG Chambers, many other companies, Transparency International and others, to discuss the guidelines, the ministerial guidelines, which the Prime Minister's Office produced, which was discussed by this meeting and subsequently by a smaller group. These are the team that helped to draft the adequate procedures. So Joyce, now you will know who came up with that coined that term trust, the drafting team, and it was launched soon after. So, important of the minister's guideline on adequate procedures basically is a guideline to assist commercial organization in understanding what are the adequate procedures that should be implemented to prevent the occurrence of corrupt practices in relation to their business activities. So, I won't go into detail because the third speaker on this panel, Ms. Joyce, she will cover in detail more about the Act. But important, this is what I was yesterday when we were discussing this. I mentioned to Joyce, we have to argue a bit in order to coin this term, but it's a way that we want to put back trust, in the board. So we came up with this, but basically to spell out the 5 broad principles from top level management commitment. There must be a proper risk assessment. They must undertake control measures, a systematic review and monitoring and enforcement. And finally, there should be a training in communication and communicate. So obviously, trust is something that we want to start. So it's not just like I mentioned earlier, not just a tone from the top, but it has to be translated and ultimately applied and becomes a common thing, becomes a culture. So the cultural change is what we need to take place in the company. So that's how these adequate procedures and trust came about, to push companies to prepare before the Corporate Liability Act is being implemented. But it's still something that you can continue to use in order to address. So come to our story. I want to share with you about when I was involved in preparing the National Anti-Corruption Plan, in addressing some of the issues that we talked about earlier. We took actual data. This was from record of 20,000 actual cases from MACC. We dissect that data, we analyze it, and we want to understand the population prone to corruption. And we found that actually from that 20,000 cases between 2013 to June 2018, 63% of the corruption cases, happened or done by public official. Of course, there are 17% private sector. But we must remind ourselves that when 63% of the public official receive that bribe, who are the giver? And I think that's important for us for today's discussion. So if we look at this data and the next one, using the same data, we want to look at the area prone to corruption. And from here, we found that actually through public procurement, 42.84% is public procurement. Of course, public procurement is the easiest way for people to embezzle money. But there are also cases done in administration, financing and revenue, licensing, enforcement. Of course, people who are enforcing the laws, they are open, they are exposed to bribery, and when they take, that becomes the problem. So we analyze this data. So the plan, and again, this is what OECD reported on public procurement. According to OECD, public procurement has been identified as the government activity most vulnerable to corruption as a major interface between public and private sector. Public procurement provides multiple opportunities for both public and private actors to divert public funds for private gain. It happens That's the easiest way for them to do. So the framework of the National Anti-Corruption Plan, as you can see, if you look at priority areas, of course, the vision is towards a corrupt-free nation. The mission to uphold the rule of law, to improve the government efficiency, and of course, to create a clean business environment. So focusing on clean business environment, integrity in business. And the priority areas, corporate governance is there. We look at law enforcement. We mentioned why enforcement becomes key. Public procurement, public sector, another 2 areas because from the data that we have. And of course, the 1MDB issues, create a lot of problems on political governance, and political governance must also be one area. But we thought that legal and judicial, no point of us hopping and trying to go if our laws, our legal system are not put in place, and judiciary, basically we don't have enough courts to deal with corruption cases. So that's why you can see now there are more corruption courts available for corruption cases to be on trial. Now, what is I want to, last few minutes, I want to drive home this. We know the state of corporate governance, the country. We know how people perceive us from international perspective. We know how bad things are, and we know we have this corporate liability. But how do I get people in the audience to realize that this is so important and every one of you out there must play a role? You see, let me share with you the cost of corruption. And this is where people always miss out. Let me use real data to explain. It was reported on April 3rd, 2011, that the country loses 108 billion income every year. How? Through corruption, because the MACC at that time, Datuk Sri Mustafa Ali, he was the Deputy Chief Commissioner of MACC. They arrested some people at the Customs Department, and they estimated that from Customs Department, 108 billion income every year lost. How could this? Let me illustrate to explain to you how this can happen. Imagine a car, a Ferrari, at 2 million, using our standard calculation. Basically, you have to pay local taxes and import duty. That's 30% plus 105% plus 10%. So if it's 2 million, the cost from outside, you have to pay another 2.9 million to get the car out. So assuming the car came through container at the port, and we know there are ways of how they can, there are fraud cases where they can tamper the X-ray machine of what passed the container. Instead of a Ferrari, they will read it as alat perabot from Indonesia, and pay a certain amount of tax. So this is one way of how these things are done, and money lost. The opportunity, the lost cost, the opportunity for countries, for Malaysia to collect that money. This is just one example. Imagine how many cars, and not just cars, there's so many other things that are being taxes that's coming in, and if all that can bypass the system of where we're supposed to collect money, I think even 108 billion is low. Probably you should multiply it by 3. But 108 billion, 1 billion is 1,000 million. That's a lot of money. What can you do with 1,000 million? Let me use reported news again. To build a state-of-the-art hospital, you need 110 million. 110 million, you get a state-of-the-art hospital. And yet, how many hospitals, now you help me calculate how many hospitals we could not build because of this loss of 108 billion. That's only hospital. What about schools, universities, roads, bridges, shelter? I hope at this point, the audience out there would realize that this is something serious, that we all have to work together to fight this corruption, to ensure that this country can move forward and becomes better, that we can have all these facilities. If the money, the taxes are collected, or any other, we could eliminate possible corruption. We could, if you can, Mr. Siva, can give me just a few more minutes to just wrap up.
Sure.
So
Sure.
I know my time is up. Just give me a few minutes. What more can you do? I'm sure after this, Dato Ahmad Sabirin will be talking about ISO 37000 and ISO 37001. anti-bribery management system, as well as the governance standard. But I've done something when I was at Integrity Institute, some integrity toolkit which we developed. This is integrity assessment tool, which you can do. This is based on Dubinsky and Richter ethics. So if you don't have money to pay for ISO, you can run this tool as a way of looking at the 12th dimension to see whether your organization is ready to move forward or to be better governance. And you will see where a survey to your staff, answer some survey, you will know where you stand, and then you can fix yourself. What else can you do? If this is at organization level, I have another tool that I developed when I was there. This is the psychometric test on integrity. This is at individual level. At least you can make sure that you don't recruit people who has a tendency to do wrong. So the psychometric test on integrity can measure, if not 100%, at least 90%, will give you the indicators if the person has a tendency to do wrong. And certainly you don't want to hire Dracula to be the CEO of your blood bank. So this is the kind of thing, the prevention measure that you can do. And you have to do much more than that. I did this guideline. This is to help you develop an anti-corruption plan. So organization you can download this, is available on GIACC website. Download this. We did it meant for everybody to help them to develop their own anti-corruption plan, and you do your risk analysis, and this will prevent you from getting in trouble. Well, this is just some of the books that I have written on governance. But I want to say this, we have to change, we have to reverse this, the editor, the article that I wrote, this is in 2015. They said something wrong with our way of life, but the more I look at it, I think everything is wrong with our way of life. You know why? Because of this. You see, this is my last line. When the baby is still in the mother's womb, God actually created the heart first. You listen, you can hear the heart beat. But when the baby is out, all parents in the world, in Malaysia too, are busy about making sure their kid go to school, get tuition, go to piano, So by the time they get to universities, they become very big-headed, But nobody touches the heart. So at the end, they become heartless people. And the problems that we are facing today, whether corruption, whatever nonsense happening, are all done by heartless people. They become too big-headed. They think they're too smart. So we have to balance up. We need to make sure that we have smart people, but we need to make sure also they have good heart. In the hope that with that and the laws like what we have that we're discussing today, and our own effort in understanding why this is so important, we can then bring together and we can be a better country. Certainly, we can. We have all the people and the right institutions and the right laws, but we have to make the effort. And organization like MIM organizing this kind of free webinars, must be applauded. And this is an important milestone for the country that we must move forward so that we become well respected in the world. We want the Malaysia that we want again. And I hope, I wish you all the best. That my little sharing from giving the background of how this whole thing came about and looking at some indicators of the problem, in the hope that you all out there are ready to make and be part of the change and be part of this movement that will make this country better. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato. Thank you for sharing your thoughts so passionately. And there are a few questions. And before that, I just want to inform all the participants that Dr. Anis will be leaving because he has got another appointment. So we will have the questions now. I've got a couple of questions that has come. Dr. Anis, I will ask you the first one. This is from Mei Hui. It says that corruption-free companies have lost sales. What compensations are available from the government?
I cannot speak on behalf of the government. I don't work for the government anymore. I'm in the university. So, of course, there are some people are talking about tax incentives and all this, but I think if you just look from the perspective of company losing, but I think you should look at the perspective. People who apply, who are doing good, who don't bribe, and also doing well. There are cases. I don't have the data with me. I mean, if there is an opportunity for MIM to organize another seminar, maybe we should just have a focus to highlight. There are so many companies out there that I know. I met people who are practicing, who doing, using the law to the T, and they are able to make money and make profit, and they don't have to oblige to corruption or to bribe people to get jobs. So it can be done. So I think we should not use an example. Oh, we try to be a good company, but what is the government helping? And I think if we say no to corruption, we don't pay, we don't get involved, then hopefully we can do better. So first, I think say no rather than we will say no provided that government must give something. I think it shouldn't work that way. Next question.
You are absolutely right, Dato, and I want to thank you, because I will take the cue from you, and we will definitely be organizing another event, and we'd like to bring you on board. Let me take the next question. What benchmark do you use to say that a country has suffered irreparable damage due to corruption?
Oh, so many. I have one slide deck that I normally look at. Countries like Somalia, countries like Zimbabwe. Like in the case of Zimbabwe, people there are suffering, and they are known as billionaires, starving billionaires, because money has no value. They have to carry that much cash, which has no value. It's very sad. So benchmark wise, I have another presentation where I normally compare two scenarios. One, a country where integrity is a way of life, but the other is a corrupt country. And in that country, the indicators all clearly shown what are the corrupt countries and how these countries, and they are. We don't have to wait for another 10 years. There are already countries, like I mentioned just now, closer to home. I think Myanmar, to some extent, quite corrupted, organized by the juntas, and how they manage and they control certain things and people at the end of the day. And from all indices, the three indices that I shared just now, if you go and search for some of these countries, look at Somalia, they are not even, in the case of Somalia, they're not even on Human Development Index, because there is no comparable data for us to compare them with the other countries. So Somalia is the only one probably is on I don't think they're even on the list, but if they are at the bottom. On corruption, Somalia is the lowest. On peace, they are, I think, bottom 5 countries. Why? Because and mind you, this country, Somalia, is run by a Khalifa, the head of the country, and nothing to do with Islam, but it's the people, how the people become so corrupt and they control, and in the case of Zimbabwe, we have heard the name Mugabe. When I was a little kid, I've heard of Mugabe, and for a very long time, Mugabe was in power, too long in power, that a country so beautiful, this is the country that got its independent only in the 80s. But in the short time between 80s to now, you see what happened to them, Zimbabwe. So we don't want to go that route, certainly. And that's why all the indicators that I mentioned are ways for us to avoid ourselves. But we cannot, the country cannot achieve this alone. The government cannot do this alone. The people need to help. Every one of us have a role to play in our own right. At home, we have to educate our children. We have to make sure that a new society, a new culture must be bred, that we must say no to corruption. We must promote a culture of integrity. We have to live with it. I think only practice. And as I mentioned, integrity cannot be taught, but it has to be caught. But experiential learning in our own life will change us. And I hope that is something. I mean, if there is an opportunity, another round of lectures to talk about the importance of integrity, I'll be happy to come and share and explain some of the thoughts and ideas that I have on this.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anis. I think you have shared with us a lot of insights, and with that, I want to thank you again for joining us on this session, and we
Thank you,
look
Mr.
forward to
Siva.
the next
Thank you for
opportunity.
having
Thank
me.
you much.
Thank you.
Now, thank you so much, and you have a good day, Dato. Right.
Yeah.
Now we'll move on to the next session. The next session is our speaker is none other than YBhg, Dr. Ahmad Sabirin in Arshad. Dr. Ahmad is the current president and group chief executive of SIRIM Bahad. Dr. Ahmad Sabirin is formerly the chief executive officer of Aerospace Ventures, a subsidiary of the oil and gas company Usma Bahad. He has also held various positions in astronautic technology, Malaysia Sendirian Berhad, which was an MOF company where he last served as the group managing director CEO from 2000 to 2019. Interestingly, he is amongst the pioneering group of engineers involved in the development of MIASAT 1 satellite at Hughes Aircraft Company, which is now known as Boeing. He is also the pioneering team for the development of Malaysia's first microsatellite, CubeSat-1, which was launched into orbit on 26 September 2000. He subsequently led the team of engineers for the design and development, launch and operations of the country's second satellite, YBhg. Dr. Haji Ahmad Sabirin is also instrumental in leading the team that provided logistics and scientific support for the launch of Malaysia's first Angkasa 1 to the International Space Station in 2007. Dr. Ahmad will be sharing, his insights on ISO 37001 certification, which is to boost trust and confidence among stakeholders. Over to you, Dato.
Let me try to get this one on. And Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon to all. And I think we have had a very good presentation by Dr. Anis. I think he has covered a lot on the MACC S17A. And when you hear my background, I'm an engineer by training, and now I'm at SIRIM. So SIRIM is very much synonym with ISO and certification. And so I'm talking about ISO 37001, which is to boost trust and confidence of stakeholders. But before I dwell on 37001, just to go a bit on the higher level, in Malaysia, this is the ABMS. The ISO 37001 is the anti-bribery management systems, but we also have this 37,000 guidance for governance of organization, which is in development and waiting to be published inshallah this year. And then we also have the 37,002, which is the whistleblowing management systems in development, and 37,301 compliance management system. So these are all the within the ISO family, which is going to be addressing the issues on trust and anti-bribery in the countries. Let me see the next one. How do I go next one? Okay, just to go on the. All right. Just to go on the high level a bit more, let's look at the United Nations. This is started way back in 2015 when the UN sets a 15-year plan for the Sustainable Development Goals, and there are 17 goals that is being mentioned here, and within these goals there are at the UN level. This one has started for since 2015, so this is nothing new, and we look at sorry. So for goal number 16, there are 12 targets, and this is to be achieved by 2030. Malaysia is aligning itself with these 12 targets, and we hope to achieve this by 2030 as well. And target number 5 within this goal number 16 mentioned about substantially reduce corruption and bribery in all their forms across all countries by 2030. So Malaysia as a country, we are committed to make sure that we reduce corruption and bribery in all forms. And I think Dato Anis mentioned this as well in terms of the National Anti-Corruption Plan that was launched in the year 2019, January. And there are two segments here that I wanted to highlight. One is for the public sector, and one is the corporate governance. And I think most of the audience here today are within the NACP clause 6.24, which is for the greater corporate entities' resilience against the threat of corruption, which is this is a requirement to be, to be done within the next 2 years. Let me see the next one. Sorry. Okay, and then these are some of the statements also made by the Chief Secretary, and you can see here the only certification body for the country is SIRIM QAS, and we are certified to do the certification for all agencies, for all companies in terms of getting the ABMS, MS, ISO 13701, and I hope people realize the importance of having it and the importance of engaging a company that is recognized and certified by international body. One of the issues that we mentioned, and I think Dato Anis also dwell on this one a little bit just now, where the bribery and corruption level of in Malaysia, and the numbers are still alarming. And when we look at the corruption, the CPI, it does not look good. It does not look good because we fare better in 2019, but somehow we are going down again in 2020. And when you look at these numbers, the CPI versus doing business in ASEAN, look at where are we in terms of rankings, and where is Singapore and where is Brunei. And within the ASEAN countries, for doing business, we are second to Singapore, and they are not too far from us. But these are the thing that we need to have to show that our CPI can be as good as Singapore, because if they can do it, why can't we do it? And we need to be better than the rest of our neighbors within the region. Next one. Okay. Again, for fraud and corruption, I think there was a mention also, because there was a survey made by PwCs, and there are incidences of bribery and corruption which continues to increase from the year 2014 to 2020. You can see the numbers here from 19% to 35%. And this is not a good sign, because it is getting to be a norms. And we don't want to have a norms which is the wrong norms. And this has to be corrected. And during this respondents, when they were asked, and almost from 11% in 2018, it has increased to 25%. They've been asked to pay to get jobs. And similarly, when they have lost business opportunities, again, these numbers are rising. So things are not looking good, despite of many measures, and despite you see many acts has been done, many activities, because it is not yet a culture. And this is something which the previous speaker mentioned, something that has to be taught at a very early age, the cultures of integrity, and we have to have a code of conduct, and this is something that we need to be putting in place. And to do this one, if you look at the numbers, 49% of the organization has the proper program to address bribery and corruption. It's not even 50%. So many people are just still ignoring what the ABMS, about corruption, and people still take it for granted. And many do not even know that they need to do it. The importance of having this bribery, corruption, ABMS system to be put in place. So this is something that we need to educate the people, the publics, the companies, the importance of having to have these systems in place. Let me see. one. All right. I think most of us do understand that this started way back in the year 2008 when PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, mentioned about guidelines on adequate procedures, and later on in Malaysia, there's also Corporate Integrity System Malaysia (CISM) in 2014, having their own code of ethics, policy compliance, and whatnot, until the year 2018 when MACC Malaysian guidelines on trust that was briefly mentioned. But again, that was guidelines. But 2016 when ABMS come in, it is very much more on compliance on the management systems, and this is something that needs to be addressed by all, because sometimes people are rather confused between the trust principle and ABMS. So let me just show you next slide. Sorry. Okay, next slide shows it is rather similar if you look at the trust requirements, but trust is only it is equivalent to ABMS, but it is only a guideline principle, and whereas ABMS is certifiable. This is where we look at top management leadership's commitment and responsibilities, governing body oversights, and there are many clauses that needs to be made aware to all the employees within the organization, and we need to put all these risk measures so everybody understand what needs to be done and what cannot be done as well. And this is an important, because often enough within PLC especially, they're talking about the trust principle, but we need to be moving on to the next level of ABMS, because ABMS is critical to ensure we manage our risk of bribery, and therefore we minimize losses within the organization. Let me see again, next slides. All right, so if you look at this number, basically Malaysia, we adopted in total the ISO 37001, that is MBMS, and then we adopt this to Malaysian standard MS ISO 37001 in 2016. So this is applicable to all industries, recognized worldwide, and it is designed to guide organizations to prevent, detect, and respond to bribery. And it is in no way that it will stop bribery, but it is designed to prevent, detect, and respond to bribery. And it will ensure compliance to applicable laws, especially in Malaysia, regulation, and other voluntary commitments. And again, this is a tool to prevent and manage corruption risk. Many people underestimated, and just now Dato Anis mentioned 108 billion has been lost in the countries, and that multiplied by 3, the numbers is actually huge, and what is reported and what is not reported. So having this mechanism is like an alarm or a safety system that will ensure the company is well protected. So the country has fully adopted the system way back in 2016. And look at next one. Just to go a bit on what is ABMS, because since we're talking about ABMS, anti-bribery management systems, it is designed to instill an anti-bribery culture within an organization and implement appropriate controls, which will in turn increase the chance of detecting bribery and reduce its incidences in the first place. So this is an important first detection system that will make sure that this can be detected and we can put a stop to the incidences. It is also designed to guide organizations to prevent, identify, detect, and respond to bribery, and to comply with laws, regulation, and other voluntary commitments. This includes a series of measures and controls that represent global anti-bribery good practice. And this is the key summary of what ABMS is all about. And I'm sure many of you have gone through the training, because now this has become part of the compulsory training by part of the Corporate Liability Act, MACC 17 capital A, and many have been attending this one, and SIRIM, as mentioned earlier on, is doing these services as well. We do give trainings, and we also do the certification for companies having the ABMS. Next one. Okay, and in the interest of business, how do you see ABMS can support business growth? At the end of the day, you want to put in this management system, ISO 37001. How does it impact you as a company? Early on, we know that if you don't do it, you may lose money. But now, if you are using it, first, number one, it will enhance the culture of integrity, transparencies, openness, and compliance. This is an important key parameters when we're talking about it. It will also enhance the reputation, image, and improve employee morale. They know that there's no more under the table discussion. There's no more under the table money that is going to be transferred, and it will give our CPI rating for the countries. The ease of doing business for Malaysia is much more better. And again, it will promote trust and confidence in businesses. People know that when they are doing businesses, there's no hidden cost. There's no hidden cost that will increase the cost of doing things in Malaysia and in businesses here. And it will also avoid and reduce the risk to bribery. And doing all of this, it will eventually reduce the cost of operation. These are the management system that you have to put in, because the result will be, once you have the culture, it will reduce cost of operation, and then your profit will go up. So this is an important criteria. The next one, it will improve the quality and productivity of work. It create awareness to the public and stakeholders that the organization is implementing ABMS, anti-bribery practices and initiative. The employee will be happy that they know that the company that they are working for is doing an openness, they're doing a very anti-bribery practice is in place. They know that they are in a good company that doesn't do the wrongdoings. And again, also this one comply to the acts and regulation related to bribery and corruption. And it will also enhance competitiveness at national and international level, because I mentioned earlier about the CPI, and having ABMS does not prevent, but it is a tool to manage and guide for good business practices. It will be a good governance for the companies to have. It will. Let me see next one. All right. So basically, ABMS is really an interrelated chain that is connected to the stakeholders. It is connected to the associate external service providers. It is to the customers, to the regulator, and this has to be from the top of organization. And often enough, when we see this one, it has to be embraced by number one in the company. It cannot be just by the employee, but the employer must also embrace the ABMS culture. And it will not work if this is not being practiced within the entire supply chain. So this is an interconnected system. ABMS is not a standalone. You must do it. You must do it with your customers. You must do it with the regulators. You must do it with your staff. You must do it with the stakeholders, with the shareholders and your business associate. Everybody must embrace this one to have a good business practice and to ensure that we are doing the right businesses for the right profit that we are aiming for. Next one. All right. Again, just a summary. When you conform to the standards of ABMS, we have the standards here that I'm sure many of you will be referring to this one when you are doing your ABMS later on. But it does not provide assurance that no bribery will occur in an organization, even if you have put it in, but because it is not possible to eliminate the risk of bribery, because you have to know what are the risks of bribery, you have to identify, you have to eliminate. But it will help the organization to implement a reasonable and appropriate measures designed to prevent, detect, and respond to bribery. I've also always say this again and again to our customers, that when you put in the ABMS, it is a system that will make sure that the organization is basically putting in all the fail-safe measures to protect itself, and you give the first responder to prevent, to detect and respond. If you don't have the system, the staff do not know how to behave, they do not know how to interact with the entire supply chain, and this will open up to opportunities for corruption and bribery. Next one. Okay. So basically, as I mentioned earlier on, 37,001 key elements. It is prevent, detect, and respond. These are the three critical information that we are doing for ABMS. It will do the bribery risk assessment, and the company need to understand what are the risk assessment that they are doing. It will be a very good financial control, non-financial control, and due diligence, and it gives the leadership policy and objective, and it is a monitoring, and it has to be reviewed, and we do it quarterly to measure what are the risk profile, what are the risk assessment, and this will allow us to make sure that the company is prepared in any eventualities in the event that the bribes occurs. So we know what sort of action that needs to be taken. All right, next one. Okay, and this is the question that is often posed to us because many people are not aware within the countries that SIRIM QAS is the only certified body that can do certification for ABMS, and people often ask whether this third-party recognition is important or not, and it is your choice whether you want to be accredited body or unaccredited. It's like buying something which has from original manufacturers, or you buy from something that is fake manufacturers. For us, if you want to do something right, it has to be the correct accredited bodies, because we are not just recognized locally, we also recognized regionally and globally, and we have the experience to different industries, geography, organization, and size and structures. So this is an important element to understand that if you want to implement ABMS, it has to be from an accredited organization. And again, I said here, SIRIM is the only one that is accredited in the countries for now, and so we are helping companies and organizations to get their ABMS in place, and we will be able to certify those management information systems while it is in place. Let me see next one. And again, why SIRIM QS? SIRIM QS is quality assurance system. This is the wholly owned subsidiaries by SIRIM Berhad, and it is the first and the only CB accredited by Department of Standard Malaysia. So we are the first one and the only one, and we are also member of International Certification Network IQNet, the world's largest network of premier conformity assessment bodies. SIRIM QS International is globally recognized. So if you have this certification, you are recognized globally. And when you are doing international business, everybody understand if we are part of IQNet, and this is recognized as well. And we are also government owned, wholly owned by SIRIM Berhad under the purview of Ministry of Finance. And now we are under the supervision of Ministry of National Trade and Industry. And whatever revenue that we generated will goes back to the government. And again, these revenues will be used, like mentioned earlier by the earlier speakers, to build hospitals, to build our road transport systems and whatnot. So it is the left to right pockets the government wanted to is using us to help the industries. And as a national certification body, SIRIM QS International has a large pool of highly trained and experienced auditors to safeguard countries' confidentiality. It is important to understand that when you are doing this internally, we are safeguarding the information of the companies, and ultimately the country's information is safeguarded within the organization. Okay, let me see. I think one of, okay, and to date, in Malaysia, for ABMS certified organization in Malaysia, there are 110 organizations that has been certified, which include ministries, government departments, local authorities, GLCs, and private companies, and many more are in the pipelines. And but just to give you a comparison between Malaysia and our neighbors in Indonesia, we have got 110 organizations so far that is certified from 2017 to 2020. And you know, there are many more companies out there beyond this 110 organization that we have certified. In Indonesia, they have done 320 organization in Indonesia. So we are only doing one third of what they have done. So if you want to go up on the value chain, we must up the ante. We must do better than our neighbors. And internationally, there are 5,000 organizations that has been certified. And for you to be competitive, you do not want to be left behind. You want to be part of that entire value chain. You want to be certified. So when you do the global business, you are respected and people have the trust and confidence in the business ethics that you are carrying on. I think I have this is my last slides. Let me see. Okay, in conclusion, this 17 capital A of MACC Act 2009 amended in 2018, this is to strengthen your defense. It will promote the integrity cultures, the code of conduct and the code of integrity will be promoted. And as I mentioned earlier, it will prevent, detect, and respond. And it is also a valuable credential that we can build trust and confidence of stakeholders. If you have it, you can have your own negotiation, you can have your own discussion, you can have your own business transaction internationally to, to show to your business partners that you are having a foolproof integrity cultures in place. And at the end of the day, what we are aiming to have is when you have this ISO 37001, it will also become the factor for your business growth. And this is an important element within for a company. You want to have growth in the systems, and we also discuss this internally that how can we promote this for more companies to have it, and they must understand that MACC Act 17A stated that it's no longer about the person that is committing the bribes. Is the organization, the directors is now responsible, is held liable for offences made by the employees. So it is an important element that you create this the systems for. So you have the foolproof system. You put all this safeguarding system to make sure that you prevent, detect, and respond in the event of any bribery that is taking place. So that's all I have for my presentation for this afternoon. I do hope that you have some key takeaways in the ABMS that we are doing at SIRIM, and please do get in touch with us for any assistance, for any guidance, for any consultation that you may require moving forward to ensure business growth and sustainability within organization. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, MIM, for inviting us to talk this afternoon.
Thank you, Dato, and I must applaud SIRIM to accelerate the uptake of ABMS in Malaysia. And also, Dato has already mentioned that SIRIM QS is there to help organizations to demonstrate their commitment to fight against corruption. So please hold on with your questions. We will see quite a number of questions that has come in. We will move it to the panel session. And now we will move on to our next panelist. And our next panelist is none other than Ms. Joyce Lim Wan-Cheak, and she is the lead partner, Forensic and Integrity Services from Ernst & Young Consulting. Joyce is the founder and the lead partner of EY practice in Malaysia and she's got actually many years of experience. If I tell you the number of years of experience she has, then you will be tempted to, calculate actual. You'll be tempted to guess the actual age. All right. In fact, she has got 23 years of experience in fraud and forensic accounting investigations, dispute investigation, governance review, and end-to-end Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, and the Section 17A of the MACC Act, and anti-bribery and anti-corruption advisory and compliance assessment. Joyce has served an array of clients in Malaysia and overseas. The investigation work also involves close engagement with external lawyers, Commercial Crime Investigation Department of the Royal Police Malaysia, the Anti-Corruption Commission, MACC, and others for investigation on fraud and corruption. Besides her vast experience in investigation and fraud risk management, she is often invited as a specialist speaker at the external events organized by statutory bodies, including sharing of knowledge with the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, MACC, Malaysian Department of Insolvency, and the Royal Malaysian Customs Department. And her topic today is corruption as modernized. So should anti-corruption initiatives. And she'll also touch on digital tools to combat corruption. And with her 23 years of experience, she is looking young. And over to you, Ms. Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Siva, and good afternoon, everybody. Nice to meet you all. And it's my pleasure to actually share in terms of the fighting and combat against bribery and corruption. So the topic today that I'd like to just share is actually related to how do you actually use digital tools to combat corruption itself? How do you use data and technologies in order to do that in the future, right? So at this situation, even the pandemic with the new change and the transformation itself, there's mega trends shaping our future itself. And in fact, in the international data corporation forecast that by 2025 itself, you will be able to see that the average connected persons globally will interact with a device every 18 seconds. And the surveys also says by 2025, more than 25% of your data created will be real-time in nature. And of course, with that itself, it will means that there will be also a significant gap between the amount of data being produced and secured and the significance of data. Now, how do you then segregate and do a data governance in order to ensure that it can be used for it in various activities, not just being a detection and compliance purposes, but can be used for the operation for optimization and effectiveness of your operations itself. So this is actually our EY Global Integrity Report 2020. Every 2 years, we actually conducted this integrity report itself. And this year, in 2020, in fact, last year, right? 2020, there was actually looking into more to the integrity, the behavior, COVID-19 situation itself. So this was actually conducted across 33 countries and territories. It's about 2,948 interviewees that we actually carry out globally. And you'll be see the results that 90% believe that the COVID-19 poses a risk to ethical business conduct at their organization itself. It is also very clear that business is actually not going to be usual, and the perception of elevated fraud risk is supported and consistent with these survey results. Besides that, you will see that worsening of the market conditions. Respondents believe that the top COVID-19 risks itself to ethical conducts are disruption to traditional work patterns. For example, now everyone is actually working from home. And what are the type of corruptions and fraud that could have happened? Do you have the right controls in place with this pandemic situation itself? Disruption to supply chain and also reduction in the staff numbers as well as retrenchments and also restructuring itself. we also conducted where focus on Malaysia itself in this global integrity report, and the top insights for Malaysia here, you will be able to see that 83% of the respondents surveyed in Malaysia says it is very important to demonstrate that their organization operates with integrity. And of course, you will be able to see the other side on the most right, about 86% of the respondents surveyed in Malaysia says that they will be concerned if information about decisions they have taken as part of their work was subject to public scrutiny. And if you compare to the Asia-Pac region, it's about 57%, and which means that our Malaysia parties in respondents in Malaysia is actually more of a concern of 86% compared to 57%. Not only that, about 66% of the respondents in survey in Malaysia says that it is challenging now for organizations to maintain their standards of integrity in periods of rapid changes and also difficult market conditions. The other top insights for Malaysia surveys that we have noted compared to the global itself, the question was actually asked as to the standards of integrity, have they stayed the same or gotten worsened in the last 2 years? So you will see on the topmost left, it will be actually for Malaysia, it's about 52%, which is quite the same as what the global respondents has actually replied as well. So 52% of the respondents says that they have got better, and whereas the only difference here is that of whether they stayed the same. Malaysia actually says it's about 44% and globally says about 39%, and the remaining of the percentage is actually about respondents says it has gotten worsened. Gotten worse. Then the next questions that was actually considered on the survey, which is on the right, concern with information decision, is the same thing. It's about 80%, and whereas just now with the global, it's about 51%, where APEC is about 40 over. The bottom of the survey itself, it's a comparison of certain specific questions, and the first one actually says that employees in this organization can report wrongdoing at work without fear or negative consequences. So the Malaysia respondent says that 58% of the respondents says, oh, I'm comfortable, I'm not worried if I were to report a wrongdoing. Whereas in global, it's actually slightly higher, it's about 67%. But if you were to look at the middle question itself, there are managers in these organizations who will sacrifice integrity for short-term financial gain. And 43% of our Malaysia respondents says yes, they will sacrifice integrity for a short-term financial gain. And whereas for the global itself, it is actually higher for about 46%. And the last portion of questions here is more to unethical behavior in this organization. It's often tolerated when the people involved are from the senior or high-ranking positions. So 35% says yes, if that's actually tolerated, whereas in global itself it's about 35%, which will mean that the 65% of the Malaysia respondents says no, unethical behavior will apply to people at senior and high position ranking people. Let's look into what are the key characteristics of integrity. And these are the survey, and it will be compared between global and Malaysia. So in here itself, on the first, does integrity characteristic means just comply with rules, laws, and regulations? So global and Malaysia says 47%. The second one is asking the characteristic of acting responsibly to colleagues, customers, and suppliers. Global says it's 43%, but for Malaysia itself is saying that the characteristic is lower, it's about 25%. Behaving with high ethical standards, that's about 38% on the global, and we are saying in Malaysia is you need to behave with high ethical standards, that's about 54%. And finally is doing the right thing even when nobody is watching. So Malaysia says that there's about 42% and global says 38%. However, looking at the percentage of these surveys itself, it seems that we need to also, besides behavior with high ethical standards, I presume most probably because of the recent corporate liability provision of the 17A of the MACC Act. But the key concern here is that integrity, a characteristic of integrity, it's 47% says I just need to comply with the rules and laws and regulations. This will need to actually further improved. Right. So ethics and technology actually transformed. Ethics and compliance functions also needs to transform here itself to play a lot of relying a lot of digital and also data and technology itself. In the past itself, the as is stated, or in currently as well, right? It's very fragmented processes, different system everywhere. They don't talk to each other. No single truth or data that you can actually find it. Very reactive things happen. I start to add on it. Partially automated processes itself. We need to change and transform using the systems that we have, technology, in order to help us to actually to combat in terms and ensure that we have ethics and compliance function effectively as well. So it needs to be more of a proactive, having the first line to be able to actually identify the red flags. How do we actually mitigate that? Do you have the controls with that? And how do you then automate it, all your risk management tools itself, so that it is not just a risk management on the risk registers manually and then you track it and report it on a quarterly basis to the respective board itself. So it needs to be an ongoing systems monitoring for even detection as well. Also, it can be used for operational purposes. Having an effective anti-bribery, anti-corruption management is actually a keystone to a success. There are three main key controls you're looking into preventive, right? Having the right ethical culture and walking the talk and effective preventive controls. What Dr. Anis was saying earlier itself, looking at the surveys, it was a bit shocking to me also that the surveys that comes from the universities itself, where people are saying that I didn't know that this was actually bribery and corruption. I didn't know this was wrong. I don't think it is wrong. Its percentage is actually quite high. And this is where actually culture is actually very key, because these people are the future of people in the future itself, to ensure that we cultivate the right culture to combat bribery and corruption. Detection itself is key, and this detection itself where you will need to actually make sure that the controls are there to help you to raise certain warning signs, certain red flags, be more preventive and proactive as well, rather than when things happen and start to react and start to actually do a lot of investigation and trying to actually solve the situation. Not only that, that actually could have caused a lot of reputation and also a lot of loss to the organization as well. Finally, if things has been reported, and most of the time when things reported itself is very key, is via a tips, whistleblowing channels, and this will be actually detected. Remediation itself, where it's there already, what actions has been taken in order to actually avoid, what are the response plans in order to close the respective gaps itself. So this is actually how the overall, you will see, is a globe, it's a holistic, how you use the data, analytics, and also technology itself in various areas, right from governance all the way to whistleblowing itself. It's immunity with the technology to combat this itself. You will see there are various bribery and corruption risks that's attacking to the organization within the circle itself. Looking at governance or tone from the top, people were thinking, oh, these are very manual, it's actually a checklist and things like that. It's not. You could use this in the technology itself. Giving an example, limits of authority. In the limits of authority, set the right limits of authority onto the system. That will actually sort of minimize any manipulation manually and judgment in inconsistency during the operation, potential management override, put all those into the system and trying to also use then the detection to see whether there's any breach to the limits of authority, and looking at the trails, the audit trails from the system itself. Policies and procedures and risk. If you do have a system that are able to actually come in terms of, if I decided to proceed with this transaction, what are the risk criteria I need to consider? Procurement itself, do I look into P&P? Do I look in government officials itself? It's not that it's not allowed, it is allowed, but however, it will be a risk criteria that will need to be assessed to ensure that there's no improper payments that are being made to any government officials or even the third parties itself. So this can be embedded within the system. And finally, in terms of the training, nowadays everyone is actually at home, right? Everyone is at home. How do you then conduct the training? You have like more than 10,000 people, few thousand people itself. E-virtual training is actually very key. Of course, you don't get to have a physical touch, physical face-to-face, in terms of the training itself. So the e-virtual training needs to be actually enhanced, not just having the screen on with you. There may be certain animated scenarios. It could be a virtual on the screen. It could even be a gamification kind of training that be conducted. But however, the e-virtual training here, if this is conducted, it has to be very clear that training analytics can be actually conducted as to analyze whether this particular department need to actually to be engaged more and to focus what are the areas that needs to be improved. Looking at the most opposite side, which is on the monitoring, detection and enforcement. Detection is actually key to give you a warning sign, early warning sign, to give you a red flags to go and check whether there's any problem before it actually becomes a problem. But however, when the detection is there must be an enforcement. This is where that enforcement will need to come in to say what are the consequential management that needs to be carried out. So in data analytics and also technology here, this is actually where key. It can actually be rule-based, set with risk score into the system to alert and provide this alert for all the compliance function to actually detect any anomalies and irregularities as well. Whistleblowing, I cannot say it's. I really have to emphasize that whistleblowing channel and speak up channel is very key here, because the key areas that tips of any potential unusual transactions or even fraud that could have actually comes normally will come via the whistleblowing channel. Now, this whistleblowing channel itself is no longer like surat layang that give a letters anymore. It will not actually create the confidence to the people to actually do that. You are not able to actually track it in a very effective manner. You have a lot of people that actually have to go through to actually put up with the analysis of it. There will be systems that they can actually connect, no longer affect. So it's a case management system where all whistleblowing comes in, is being tracked. You can communicate with the third parties, with the whistleblower as well, to identify and get more information as well from a very independent parties to actually manage the case management. Not only that, when the cases come in, it can be tracked in terms of what are the status of the investigation and the results out of it. At the same time, it can also be tracked in terms of what are the corrective actions and also the remediation plan in order to close the gaps of the company itself. So data itself consists of data which is unstructured data and structured data. We call it unstructured data is like email, like chats, like Teams communication, WhatsApp, phone records. These are unstructured. And you have structured data, financial records. You have like time and expense claims and purchase order. These are very structured data. In the future itself is actually to use the unstructured and the future and also the structured data integrated to actually develop something which is more meaningful, to even the extent not only doing a predictive modeling but also able to actually analyze the sentimental or emotive tone of the messages itself to see whether there was any issue with that transactions or with that situation, or even with the emotion of the people at the time within a certain period for a certain objectives. So this is where a detective tool can actually be used to actually analyze various purchase order, various payroll itself, whether expenses, entertainment were actually being included in there. People actually reimburse expenses as a conduit for a payment of facilitation itself that has been made. Procurement to pay itself proper in order to ensure that proper due diligence has also been carried out as well. And also in terms of the sales, whether you are actually giving sales and order itself, how does it actually, the sales comes in, procurement itself in terms of, are you targeting and in favor of certain suppliers only? So this is where it can actually be used to detect anomalies, irregularities in order to actually prevent bribery and corruption and to fight against it as well for compliance functions, ethics and compliance function. So in terms of whistleblowing, which I'm not going into a bit more detail, these are more of how the case management can actually happen, even via call, via email, that can connect directly to the systems itself. Oops, it's not moving. Okay, so the last part over here itself, this is just a case that we have done in AY, where it happens to pharmaceutical companies, and they have actually manufactured more than 3,500 medicines itself. 70 facilities, they were caught. They were caught under the FCPA DOJ itself for dismiss. And in order to dismiss this, because they were involved in violation involving bribes paid to government officials in certain countries, three different countries within a period of 2007 to 2013. And with that itself, they are penalized. And in order to actually reduce this and dismiss these charges, they need to ensure that they actually have a proper controls and system and due diligence being carried out, third-party risk management due diligence, because they were carrying out all these activities via a third party itself. So all data were actually received and was actually looking into the due diligence. And what has happened is that besides that, this is a control that could prevent bribery and corruption of actually making payments to via third parties, either agents, consultants, or distributor itself. It also helps operationally the company itself to reduce the approval of the process of third party significantly as well from the operation point of view. Right, I just like to end a few more. This is a recap and a takeaway message itself as a self-reflect itself. There are 6 questions to actually consider. Do you have the right compliance framework? Do you have and strengthen risk of the first line? Have you actually streamlined the compliance processes? Have you had the technology enabled approach? And how have you actually built and retained compliance talent? And have you actually checked the effectiveness of your whistleblowing channel? Right. And call to actions for everyone as a takeaway message. Define what integrity means to your organizations. Leverage technology, AI, and data to automate and monitor the risks. Transform your compliance function to forward-looking, and also develop a robust crisis response to strengthen the stakeholder trust itself. And finally, I'd like to actually end the quote here for everyone. Transparency, objectivity, and consistency in having an adequate controls and procedures are the catalyst to instill trust. And that trust inspires people to embrace long-term and sustainable value to combat bribery and corruptions. That's all for me today from me, and I hope that this is a good sharing that I can from the practical and from various clients itself, and stay safe in the current pandemic. Yeah. Back to you, Mr. Siva.
Yes, thank you, Joyce. Thank you for that spirit, and we have a good 15 minutes now, and there are a lot of questions. And let me just ask the first question. This is to Dr. Ahmad Sabirin. And this question is our current education standard the cause for the worsening corruption in Malaysia? When we had the last session, we had Professor Farid Alatas from the National University of Singapore, he did mention that we need to, inculcate, this anti-corruption, bribery, and all this. What shall I say? The values into our curriculum. So, what are your thoughts on this, Dato?
No, thank you, Shiva. I think it was a good question and very, very relevant. The issues now, because we are not exposed to integrity, ethics, and codes at a very early age, and even when I was a little boy in Penang, this good copy is typical. So giving money is accepted norms, but this has to be told to the younger people today that this is the wrong things to do now, and people shouldn't be paid over and above whatever they are being paid. I definitely wanted to see integrity part, the code of conducts, to be part and parcel of our education system, because the nation is always assessed and evaluated based on the education system, and we can see the declining of the system because there's no values. So the values is important. So I am very much a promoter and a supporter of having an integrity value system within education systems. So I welcome that.
Yes, and it's also quite alarming when we listen to the slide that when we saw the slide that was shared by Dr. Anis, when he said that from the survey from the university students, about 20% of them said that using office fund money for personal interest is acceptable. Right? I think we have got a long way to go. That survey is quite. What shall I say? Very alarming.
I think Mr. Siva, I think we look into university education when they plagiarize, when they copy certain things without acknowledging. Those are issues of integrity, and when you allow this sort of bad habit, bad cultures to grow, and they will do damages when they are in the working environment. So it has to be stopped at a very early age.
And also, Dato, if you see that corruption perception index, there seems to be a cyclic trend. And I want to ask the next question is, can all these anti-corruption measures be executed in our government, no matter who is the ruling party?
No, definitely. I like to say, to me, it should be a government blind. It should be blind to the government, and whoever that is in place, regardless whether whomsoever is the ruling party, that should be in place and should be a separation of power between the government and judiciary and executives and all these regulators. And these are something that we wanted to see. And again, within the company for the ABMS, we want the number one within the companies to embrace it. Here we want the prime ministers to embrace it as well. And it goes to the cabinets and it goes to all the ministers and it goes to all the civil servants. It has to be everybody to do their part. Then only we can see that regardless of whomsoever is the ruling party, there should be a foolproof systems for all.
Yes, and actually, if you see today's paper, when we have the current prime minister has already engaged the opposition, for good governance, at least we would be able to see something that is done at the parliament level.
That is
And that is a good initiative. Let's see more of this being visible. At least there will be a light at the end of the tunnel. Right.
Agreed,
And the next question to you, Dato, is that can all these anti-corruption measures? Okay, no. All right. Let me just skip that. Is it ideal to have anti-corruption department within a public listed corporation, or should it be under the purview of the internal audit department?
No, I think. What was the question again? Sorry, I cannot hear you. I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. Is it ideal to have an anti-corruption department within a public listed corporation? And should it be under the purview of the internal audit department then?
Okay, this is definitely important to be part of the PLC, the anti-corruption departments or the integrity governance unit that we call it. and it shouldn't be part of the integrity audit because we want to have a separation of responsibilities. And I think MACC has always citing this information, the observation that it shouldn't be part of the integrity unit because otherwise it is a conflict of duties. So it has to be separated between these two and agencies of integrity and then the integrity governance unit or the corruption units. It has to be separated.
Thank you for your opinion. And Joyce, this is for you. Public official prone to corruption, they are the highest at 63%. Can we do anything about it?
Okay, so this comes from public officials, right? So I'm not going to actually sort of govern in terms of what the government will do, but I guess they originally under the MACC Act itself, as a public officials, they already governed even before the 17A comes about. There are a lot of initiatives that has also been carried out by the government, not only implying to the commercial organizations, but also to the public officials sitting under the government agencies, government linked companies as well. Although they were not part of the, if they are not statutory bodies and not subsidiaries of the government itself, they were not required to be compliant with the 17A because they are not the classification of commercial organization. I guess what I can see is that there are more and more action plans and initiatives that needs to come in. In order to do that, my personal view is that I think really it comes from the tone from the top, which doesn't mean it's an organization, it's the country itself. And also the initiatives that taken in order to ensure it should not just be focusing on the on the commercial organization, but also the government agencies. It's a culture change that everyone needs to be in mind. We can't hear you, Mr. Siva.
Incidentally, it is the first principle of the five trusts, right?
Yes.
And there is the next question, Joyce, to you is on Section 17A is drafted in a manner to regulate commercial organizations. Would the provision also regulate NGOs, or are there separate provisions to govern them, as some could be a sham of facade?
Right. So the 17A itself, which is a 17 capital A, right? It governs in terms of what is commercial organization. So as long as the company or the organization are incorporated under the Companies Act, they are incorporated under the Limited Liability Partnership Act, and they are also governed under or incorporated or registered under the Partnership Act itself. They are governed under the commercial organization, which is a 17A. It includes also company that are incorporated within the organizations, as well as companies that are overseas but they are running the business over here itself. So if you are actually classified NGOs itself or foundations, which is under the trust and also under, let's say, statutory body, then you are not governed under the definition of commercial organization.
Thank you. And Dato, I'll have another question for you. On corruption risk assessment, the CRA, shall it be conducted by the risk department or integrity unit? What's the best approach for CRA in a company?
Normally, for us, we are doing this through the risk department to do the risk assessment, because we wanted to make sure that we have separation of authorities and responsibilities between risk department and then integrity departments. So for the CRA, it's always being done to the best of our knowledge is done by the risk department. Siva.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Joyce, we have drawn acute difference with Singapore pertaining to the ranking on the corruption index. Besides that, what would be the main lesson be that Malaysia should take a leaf from?
You need to see total population in Singapore and the total population in Malaysia. The different culture of Malaysia and Singapore. The way that the country is run is also very different. We have various races here as well. I guess the only key thing that I see which is very good at the Singapore side is enforcement. The enforcement over at the Singapore side is very strong in when it comes to any wrongdoings itself. Maybe lessons learned over here is that maybe the enforcements will need to be beef up with the number of people. I know there are scarce of resources as well, and also enforcement and being independent as well with the enforcement team. So that's where I think lessons that we could learn in order to ensure that we could actually protect to prevent a bit more wrongdoing and improve the index.
Thank you. And Dato, are the government sectors implementing ISO 37001?
Yes, the government sectors are implementing ABMS 37001, and up to date we have about 40 ministries and government agencies doing it. And in fact, there are many more that is in the pipeline. We are supposed to be finishing this one by the year 2021, but I think this will be extended because there are more and more departments and ministries wanting to have this one in place.
Okay. That is very good. There's a good initiative. And Joyce, the corruption that is done by the person this is with regards to the corruption again. The corruption that is done by the person in the organization, is the person only or the person together with the organization, or only the organization will be punished according to Section 17A?
Okay. So we are talking about receiving and we're talking about giving, right? So person who receive definitely it will fall under the MCC of section 16 and also at 17, and at giving itself where this is actually covering 17A, right? So this is where they are binding in terms of one, the company, which is the commercial organization, and two, the responsible person within the organization who has been entrusted with the fiduciary duties of the entity to protect and prevent this from happening. So it can be people that not only coming from a board of directors, it can be the senior management, it can be the manager, it can be the employees, and including if the associated person is acting on behalf of the company, but they are the one who actually help you to give the bribe, you are also governed over that. So would mean that this act itself will only says that if you do have the adequate procedures and you do have a duty to actually prevent this from happening, and you are aware this is happening and you did not prevent this and it's under your duty, you are governed by this act as well.
Thank you, brilliant. And Dato, may I ask you, forward this question to you. One of the initiative under NACP is private sector need to implement ABMS certification in order to bid government contract, that is January 2019 to December 2020. But it has yet to be implemented. Such requirements are not spelled out in tender document until now. When will it be fully enforced?
Okay, I cannot answer this on behalf of the Ministry of Finance because the Ministry of Finance is the one responsible for the tenders and whatnot. And if you look into the documents, they are the initiator, and we are not the initiator. We are the certification agencies. But I believe this will be initiated once we have many more companies having their own ABMS, and then there will be a requirement. It is a requirement, but it is not yet being enforced. So I hope, and we are talking to MYF as well to see this one being in place very, very soon. Hopefully not too long from now.
And with that, we're almost coming to the end. I'll have one more question, Dato. Are you okay to take it?
Sure.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is about ABMS. How ABMS can help an agency to strengthen their whistleblowing mechanism, that is whistleblowing policy and process. What about ISO 37002?
Okay, actually for ISO 37002, That one has been published in June this year. It is about a whistleblowing policy. And in fact, for the ABMS also, if you look into the Article 8.9 in the raising concern, there's a mention about whistleblowing policy as well. So it is something that it has been incorporated, and I think whomsoever asked the question can refer to those ISO 37002, and it is already embedded in 37001 Article 8.9.
Thank you, Dato, and thank you, Miss Joyce. With that, we have come to the end of today's session, and I want to thank all our participants who have joined us for the last 2 hours. At one point, we had close to 508 participants, and now probably we have about 427 of them who have still stayed on. I think this has been a very engaging session, and I want to thank all the participants, and more so, to our distinguished panel. My heartfelt gratitude to our panel, Dr. Anis, who has left earlier, Dr. Ahmad, Sabirin, and Miss Joyce. Thank you for bringing in that awareness, and we're very happy to have you on board. And also, in support of the National Anti-Corruption Plan, MIM is also offering the certificate in governance, compliance, and anti-corruption from BESL, BESL Institute of Governance. It's a 3 certificate, and once you finish all the 3, you will get a diploma from BESL Institute of Governance. And just to end, I would like to end with this note from one of our participants, that is Vivian Chong. She said, "Faith without action is dead. Whatever we believe or pursue, we will have to put into practice, to experience and to learn." I think she has captured it very well. With that, I want to thank our partners, our Conrad Adina Siftong, as well as the supporting partners, sponsors, and also to my team under the leadership of Kabi, Joyce, and the whole MIM team that has helped put this together. Thank you very much, everybody, and stay safe and have a blessed day. Good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.